DJ's book left, and then I've kind of just started last week. I moved on to reading this Kabbalah book, Tree of Life book.
Oh,
Oh, I got that one.
Really enjoying it.
whose is that?
His name is Will Parfit.
Hmm.
It's actually very clear and
Yeah.
well constructed and has good information in it.
Oh, that's
I've
good.
had
I
it
don't know
for
that I read
years.
that one.
It's copyright.
I think it was a
91.
Barnes and Noble special book at one time, like one of their.
Yeah, but
impress.
he's really, you can tell he's like
He knows
He's
what
a-
he's
Okay, we are
talking about.
live.
he's a good writer. He's as good a writer as he is a researcher on the topic.
Yeah,
So
wow.
he's
I
very
refer to it a
clear,
lot.
concise.
Who's this?
His name's Will Parfit. He's the guy who wrote this Kabbalah book I'm reading.
Okay.
And,
I've had that one
Well,
for several years. It's parked right next to me.
I had it for a couple. I was,
Very good.
oh my god, at Cal's. And just hadn't gained enough context until now to use it.
Yeah.
Have you read any Kabbalah, or did you have
No,
any
I'm kinda
little introduction other than what we've thrown at
Just
you?
what you thrown here,
Mm.
just kind of, just pretty general. I have Israel Regardi's Tree of Life as well.
I have that, but I haven't looked. at
Which
it.
book is that?
Israel Israel Regardi's Tree of Life.
Okay, his
It's
tree
got
of
another
book called The Tree of Life?
He has one
Yes.
called that, yeah, I have.
Okay,
That
that one
and
is
the
actually
little
not a good
pillar.
one for learning the Tree of Life.
I wondered when I looked at it. It seemed like I think I need to know a lot more before.
I figure he's pretty,
This-
It's
this-
pretty out there from what I could.
The subtitle of that book is A Tree of Life, comma, or colon, semicolon, whatever, a study in magic.
Yeah, it's not.
It's a
not
book
as
about
much.
Western magic. He does discuss aspects of the Tree of Life and how to use it in Western magical workings. It's a lousy book to learn the Tree of Life.
Yeah.
He has one that I really love for learning the Tree of Life called A Garden of Pomegranates.
Ah,
Never heard of that one.
So it's usually you can find it as a free downloadable PDF, which is how I got it. I got both of them that way. So if you have trouble finding it, just email me, either one of you, and we will. I can just email it to you as a PDF.
pomegranates,
The
yeah.
Garden of Pomegranates. So I heard that and I go, yeah, I bet I know what he's doing. He's looking at the wrong
He's
book.
got another one called The Middle Pillar.
The Middle Pillar is also a book regarding different aspects of Western alchemical magic.
Right.
If you're going to go down that path, and we can talk about that at some point, I can help you with that path also. It's a path I am involved with. But it's not required to do the Toltec work. The Toltec work will take you to essentially the same place. But if you're like me, you like to know everything. So
Yeah.
Well,
I'm
But
Sag, I wanna
one-
know it all.
one esoteric, get one down first. I had a friend when I was in martial arts. Well, I guess I still am, but I was training with him. He'd gone up to that halfway, 2/3 of the way to black belt in like 5 different systems,
yeah.
and he'd never finished one of them. So he knew a little about a lot of stuff, but he didn't know a lot about anything. And the instructor we both had at the time said, just finish one. He said, you got 10 years experience in, you should have your black belt within 3 to 4. You know, if you do rigorous training 2 to 4 times a week for 4 years, you develop a proficiency that in most systems they would call a first degree black belt. And he hadn't done that. And he eventually moved out of the area. I never learned if he got his black belt, but he was off to his 6th system at that point.
Maybe not, but
And so I really recommend using that same analogy for your esoteric work is pick a system and master it, and then
Hey,
move
how are
on.
you, Karen?
yeah. I mean,
Is this mine?
That's your outline, and then those are the.
Okay,
reading
good.
lessons. Welcome.
Ms. Karen, why don't you move about 2 seats down so you're on camera?
Right here?
Yeah, that'd be good. Is she on there? Just close that one that says
Yep.
Logic Academy. Okay, perfect.
Should you choose to ask a question.
Um, yeah. So I thought that's the other thing. I'm halfway through that book too. So
Which book?
so after emailing you and
Oh, yeah,
talking,
yeah.
talking about the ENFP, as soon as I read, sometimes it takes like saying stuff and then I reread it and I'm like, oh, so I pretty much just abandoned the whole idea because I was turned off by one thing. But there was like this book, I was like it's a woman who wrote the whole series of them, like several of the different personality types. However, she also happens to be an ENFP, so she's
Mhm.
writing from the perspective of also being one. So I'm halfway through that book, and it's more than just here, let's celebrate you and your personality, and here's what you should do with the world. Like at least half the book's like, what are your weaknesses? What are the problems you probably run into? And what you can do about them, and how you can counteract them. And it's really
Good.
I've been finding
Yeah.
that very helpful.
No,
And even the
it's-
part on the careers and stuff like that, it's
So for those of you who aren't privy to this conversation, and that includes all of you, but since you brought it up, as part of my work, I have to many people recommended the Myers-Briggs personality profile as a highly valuable tool for self-introspection. And this actually ties in with our subject tonight very well. The subject tonight is know thyself. And if you're going to be doing any kind of esoteric work, you have to be honest with what your traits are. Who am I? What do I do? What am I good at? What am I not so good at? What do I like? Where are all the things where we don't go there? We don't talk about that at parties. We pretend it doesn't exist, right? Because we all have that. And to attain spiritually on any system, you have to look at that. Sometimes it's called mirror work. Sometimes it's just introspection. Sometimes it's called brutal honesty.
Shadow work.
Shadow work, that's a term you're going to hear me use tonight. That pertains, of course, to the shadow self, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So as part of that, Kent has done some looking, and the first author who wrote a book, it's a simplified version of the Myers-Briggs test and a simplified version of explanation, and it's a book that 20 plus years ago I found very useful in making the decision to leave my engineering career and go into natural healing. So he didn't like that particular book, and so he threw out the baby with the bathwater. And when he shared with me some of his concerns about it, we took a different twist on it, and now he's getting valuable information. So there's more than one way up the mountain, and on even any one subject like the Myers-Briggs, there's more than one author, there's more than one website there's to take the test on. There's always a way. And if the Myers-Briggs test doesn't resonate with you, if you decide to use that as a tool, that's okay. Find another. Yeah.
I took inspiration from that too, and I took an IQ test and an emotional intelligence test. I was very humbled by what my IQ actually is, but I was pretty proud of myself for my emotional intelligence.
Let's talk about IQ tests, and there's no need to be humbled because the test is essentially bogus.
Wow.
IQ tests are very specifically, just like the American education system today, to train people who are really good at short-term memory and really good at following instructions from rote. Basically, living, breathing, walking, talking robots. They are really lousy at telling you you're smart when what you do is think outside the box, where you're intuitive, you integrate a lot of different things, you're good at analysis, you have great long-term memory, and can juxtapose a lot of different things. In other words, you're a critical thinker. IQ tests won't identify that. So, and I said that from back in the day when the last time I took an IQ test that anybody told me the result of was in high school, and it was extremely high. And there were things I felt really smart on, there were things I felt really stupid on, and then over time, as I came to understand that, I don't believe in IQ tests. It's like there's a cartoon that goes around, it shows all these different animals lined up, and they have to take, for fairness, we have to take the same test. So it shows a goldfish in a bowl, and it shows a monkey, and it shows an elephant, and it shows a couple other things. It said, so we're going to have the standardized test, and it's who can climb that tree the fastest. And everybody's looking like the elephant, like, and the goldfish in the bowl, like, and the monkey's like, right? It's a stacked deck.
Yeah.
So ignore them. So, yeah. Myers-Briggs is one of the few tools I found in the world of modern psychology that I would describe as A, accurate, and B, useful.
They
It's
have,
not the only one out there, but it's one of the better ones I've seen.
they have like booklets. I don't remember how much I paid for it. They're about half the price of a book. There's a little rack of these kind of tests where there's an IQ test, Myers-Briggs test, emotional intelligence test at Barnes and Noble. But I got the same results and felt just as satisfied using the free online one.
Yeah.
And actually I thought that the information that came in the blurbs on the free online one were much more informative and better. But yeah, I definitely feel like the book was kind of what was needed. Like I said, most of those things that they feel like they only get like an hour of your time. It's all positive. They just throw nothing but positive at you. So if you actually want to do in depth, you kind of need to buy a book that you're gonna spend some time with.
Okay, let's start. Welcome everybody. Welcome, Sarah. Let's start with some announcements. I will turn that over to the lovely Bonnie.
Okay, well, we're going to be putting out a new newsletter pretty soon. We have a lot of concepts and things that we would like to offer, and yet we are getting offers for Arlen / Dr. Cage / Golden Eagle to speak and participate in different things. So that's kind of changing our plans a little bit. But if there's, especially out of the core students, if there's specific topics that you would like to learn about, please let us know. We were talking about an advanced healing class. We were talking about the work that he just did recently with kinesiology down in the LA area, that we can offer a similar kind of class up here. We're going to need to schedule an level 3 cardio class and potentially an advanced level 3. So if there's, I can't remember, there was something else. Oh, everybody was interested also in the long distance healing. There was a thread online this last week from a cardio student from a different fraction.
So along those lines of those classes you just mentioned, my goal as the leader of this esoteric school is I want to get everybody who's active, that includes a few who are not here on a regular basis. I want to get everybody up to a level 3, and then the fun can start. Then that's you have to be at a level 3 for, there's no set minimum time, but at least a little while, so that you can have assimilated it, been using Ikadwa as a level 3, and then I can start teaching some of the advanced techniques that are very transformative for your spiritual growth. And after that, you've done these advanced techniques for a while, then we can do level 4, and that's when the really cool stuff starts. Everything with Ikadwa is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I remember going from not having the Ikadwa to having the Ikadwa as a level 1, and it blew my mind until I got level 2. And then it blew my mind, doubly. And I thought, man, this is the best ever, until I got level 3. And I was like, beyond mind blowing, right? Until I got level 4, and it's like amazing. So there's a bump up at every level in terms of your strength, your abilities, what you can use it for, and your spiritual growth, and how it affects and impacts your entire life. So at level 3, there's some specific, you need to be level 3. And then the fun stuff starts. And then at the advanced level 3 class, which is, you just need to be level 3 for a little while, there's a couple of really specific things I want to teach. And then after you've been doing those techniques regularly for a little while, then we can go to level 4. And hopefully my goal would be to sometime in spring do a level 3 class, and sometime by mid-late summer, depending on my travel schedule, have an advanced level 3 class, and then this fall I want to do a level 4 class. And I need a group of level 4s working together with attention, channeling high levels of energy to do some specific things. So that's my goal. And the side effects of you doing that work to help the larger Toltec work is you move your own spiritual growth and transformation further along and along and along and along. And at some point in there, you will tap in and know your true will. You will know and converse with your holy guardian angel. Now that might not happen today, but it will happen if you keep going. That's what I have to tell you. So that's why these classes are being organized the way the lovely Bonnie was describing. What else we got?
Okay, so this Sunday we'll be at a what's it really called? It's called the New Earth Expo in Sacramento, and that's just a one-day Sunday event. And there will be Golden Eagle will be lecturing at that event, and it's mostly going to be an event where this is how we get our reach people out in the communities to bring new level ones in and so forth. So we're going to be, getting signups for the mailing list and potentially doing level 1 transmissions. So anyone who is interested in helping support the booth, that would be great. And then also, we had an event scheduled in Chico, and this is, we have a conflict now because Dr. Cage has been asked to speak at another event out of state. And so we are probably going to cancel that Chico Fair booth unless there are a few level 2s and 3s who would like opportunity to host the booth. So it would be an Akadua booth, essentially, that would, again, the intent would be to get people on the mailing list to demonstrate the Akadua, so to be able to send it and receive it and have people feel and sense what that's about, and potentially even give level 1 transmissions.
I think we need a minimum of 2 level 3s. And if there was anybody who was a level 2 who wanted to go for experience and checking people's Akadua after they receive a transmission, then we could have 1 or 2 of those. I think between 2 and 4 people it would take to run that booth. We haven't paid for it yet, but
When is this?
that's
It's April 8th, and it's also just a Sunday in Chico.
So it's not that far away.
You're interested?
Okay.
Great. Thanks, Sarah.
So we're going to be
Yeah? Okay.
we're going to be specifically calling people if they want to do that. So if you get a phone call, you'll know what it's about.
And then we are hoping to follow up within a week or two after that event with an actual level 1, level 2 class out there, so that anybody who's signed up or is interested or whatever, we're trying to get a healing circle or to get all of those all the Akadua students in the Chico Paradise area together for potluck one night or something, just so everybody knows each other and can have a group that they could practice with, or just keep the Akadua going out in little satellite locations.
We've got pockets of people scattered around there. I've got at least 1 or 2 level 3s. I've got 2 or 3 level 2s. I've got 2 or 3 level 1s down there. And it's like nobody knows each other. They're really not talking. Well, except the 2 who are engaged to get married. They kind of know each other.
They probably do.
But other than that, they're kind of like, So we need to get, what I really want here in Redding, Chico, and maybe all around in concentric circles moving out, is these little Akadua groups working with the Akadua. Too often people get it and they're working by themselves. And so even once a month for somebody to host a healing circle, and it doesn't have to be only about healing, it could be spiritual work as well. We could practice some of the other techniques, such as will come up in our Shamanic Arts weekend next weekend. But some of the things we'll be teaching with the Akadua. But it really needs to be these self-sufficient groups, right? Because the geography up here, everything's just way too spread out. What's next?
So, so not this weekend, but the following weekend is our Shamanic Arts Weekend up in Mount Shasta. If you have not contacted us, but are intending to come or would like to, or need to make some kind of payment arrangements, just give me a call and we'll work something out so that you can be there. But we do need commitments as soon as possible because the lodging and the food arrangements and all that is going to depend on who's going to be there. And that is also, the theme of that is called the Seeds of Power for that event. Anyone who has signed up as a probationer and has never met with Dr. Cage, please do that. But otherwise, if you've been a probationer for 3 months and you have questions about what's next, you might want to also call him.
Or if you haven't formally committed, but you're thinking about it, you should also talk to me. There are some, if you're thinking about it, if you've been coming around to most of the events and that sort of thing, there are specific advantages to committing and becoming a part of the school. And this has to do with what goes on the higher inner planes. There's a level of protection that being associated with the school can provide. When you start doing work, you're like a light bulb that goes on, and there are things out there watching that. And if you're alone and you're not connected with a school, you're an easier target. When you are connected with the school, there's basically a transformation in your aura, in your energy field, and people go, oh, well, oh, maybe not. There's some really bad, dark things out there who aren't going to be turned off by just one lone shaman. But I'm not just one lone shaman. I'm part of a lineage, and when they see that lineage, they know with whom I'm connected. And they know I'm bad enough, but then when they see the lineage behind me, they'd have to be pretty determined to take on all of that. I mean, it happens occasionally, and most of the time they lose. I can tell stories, but I won't. So do talk to me. Some of you have, most of you have. Reading list. I've been promising for about 2 months a reading list. It's not done. It's a work in progress. But take one and pass the rest on, please. The only 4 books on there that are required are the 4 at the top, which most of you already know about. The rest is just if you are interested in a subject, then these are some of the better resources I found. I have a library of hundreds and hundreds of books, and the limited number in each subject there is nowhere near what I own, but I own things that aren't, yeah, just leave them someplace. I own things that aren't necessarily the best starting point, and some of them are just, like if I find a book on the Kabbalah for $2 at a used bookstore, I'll buy it and figure out later whether it's worth keeping or reading. And so I've got half a dozen others on the Kabbalah which aren't on this list of easy learning opportunities. So look this over, and this also ties in with our theme for tonight, which is know thyself. I'm going to be teaching you over the months and months a lot of different things. I'll be teaching multiple ways of meditation. I'll be teaching multiple ways of building attention. I'll teach multiple ways of building your energy bodies, and on down the list. And I will teach way more techniques than any human could ever do on a consistent basis as part of your daily personal practice. So you're going to peruse them all, and you're going to keep what's useful to you. knowing full well that what's useful to you today will be different than what's useful to you a year from now or 5 years from now, and so on. The stuff that was useful for me 5 and 10 years ago, I don't do. And now I do other things because we grow and develop, and I think that's the whole point of this process. So look it over. You follow where you're led. And that's what we mean by know thyself. You have to know what you're interested in and why, hopefully why. So, in that broad category of know thyself, we're all really good at knowing our strengths. You know if you're good at math. You know if you're good at art. You know what you like. And so we tend to gravitate and repeat over and over again the things that we're A, good at, and B, like. Sometimes we're good at things, but we don't really like them, so we do them less. Some things we like, but we may not be so good at it, at least not at first. And whether we pursue those or not depends on the feedback we get from the society around us. If we're kids and we love art, but we're still learning, and we're still in those little miniature bodies that are still growing, we don't have the hand-eye coordination yet. What's in our head isn't what's coming out on the paper, and the teacher walks by and laughs at us and ridicules us, well then we probably put art away. And it goes to a place where we put all the things we don't like about ourselves. And that place is called the shadow self. So the I'm bad at art gets stuffed down in our shadow self. And we move on to something else. And then there's things that we don't like about ourselves and we're not good at. And we just don't go there. So that all goes in the shadow self. And over time, maybe we figure out, oh, we've got a bad temper. And we snap at people and we yell and scream when we're being insulted or offended, or somebody steals our toy, and everybody in the family, everybody in town, everybody at schools puts us down because we've got a bad temper. And maybe we say, up yours very much, and we flaunt our bad temper. And we wear that as one of our masks, as one of our personas, is I'm the bad temper guy. Well, that's not so much down in the shadow self, that's right out in front for everybody to see. But maybe we're trying to fit in. We're going through that socialization process, so we put the bad temper down. I'll pretend to have a good temper. But that's really not our nature. We don't know why we have a bad temper because we don't go there, we don't figure it out. And our society doesn't help us figure it out. Our society is really bad at teaching young adults in training, i.e. children, how to be self-introspective. We just, good, bad, do this, don't do that. No explanation. Hit them with a stick, or with a spoon, or a whip, or time with a chain to a post in a basement for 20 years. Whatever that stuff was that just happened down in LA a few months back. Like these 30-year-olds, completely illiterate, tied to chains in basements. It's like their lives are ruined.
They don't weigh anything, they barely got them. It's terrible.
So, yeah, karma will come calling
Oh,
on
yes.
those people.
It will.
And hopefully the universe will be kind to the victims. That's all we can hope for. But this shadow self, what I have here, when I get my mug of water out of the way, is this yin-yang symbol. This is a symbol from primarily Chinese philosophy. It's intended to be rotating. Okay, imagine this slowly rotating and morphing. So the white represents the yang, the dark represents the yin. Each contains within it the seeds of the other. So yin and yang are continually interchanging. If you get something that's extreme yin, it will morph into yang and vice versa. And there's a lot of religions, there's a lot of spiritual, philosophical systems, especially part of the so-called New Age movement, which, as all of you know, and for the benefit of those online, the New Age isn't anything new. The New Age is referring to the aeon that we're just transitioning into, but the philosophies of the New Age are actually extremely old, thousands of years old, aeons old. So the New Age movement that has been taking these rich, elegant philosophies, many of them from the Hindu lineages of the Eastern religions and philosophies, and packaged them down. Made it real simple, short, sweet, to the point. Here it is. And it's all the love and light. They're looking at the light. We don't go there on the dark side. So they're leaving out, in many cases, half the universe. They're leaving out half our psyche. They're leaving out half our consciousness because they don't look at that shadow self. They don't go there. It's all the feel good, make me comfortable, happy, and fluffy philosophies. And I recently had an opportunity to see that in action where people can be presented with the real work and the real transformative opportunities, and they start to feel uncomfortable. Maybe it's the radiations that come through the shaman that fill the room, and you start to squirm. And it's like, oh. You have to sit there and face it. And when that makes them uncomfortable, some people run away. In which case they weren't ready, and that's okay. But the notion that there's so many systems and teachers out there telling them that, oh, if it makes you feel uncomfortable, it's got to be bad. It's got to be from the dark side. It's like, no. Anything that teaches you that it's got to be comfortable is missing the dark side of the universe. It's missing half the universe. And you can't work very high up the tree of life if you don't have a stable foundation. It will crumble, it will topple, it will fall. Maybe not the first step up, but before you get very far up, something's going to give. When you're under the pressure of doing the higher level work, whatever part of that work it is, every weak link will suddenly be exposed. And so all those weak links are the things like your hot buttons. They are the things that we don't like about ourselves. They're all the stuff that we stuff down in that shadow self. You have to be introspective. You have to be brutally honest with yourself. You say, you know what? I'm like this. If you don't like being like that, you have to really explore it. Why is that a hot button for me? Why is it I react that way? Why is it that within 30 seconds I'm screaming at people because they're just so stupid? I had a boss ask me that one, why do you get so angry? It's like, I just looked at him one day. The guy wasn't, for being a manager at an aerospace company, he wasn't the brightest light bulb in the box. I just looked at him and I said, so-and-so, we were kind of on a first name basis. It wasn't Mr. So-and-so. I said, have you ever gone to work and watched 7 of your friends get blown up in front of your face? No. So I said, I have. And it's no fun to spend 3 months wondering if you're the one who killed them. And this business that we're in, That's the kind of stuff that happens when you F things up and you do stupid things and you don't FTFP, which stands for follow the flipping procedure, and rattled off the list of all the things that he and some of the other managers, all the corners they were cutting and all the things that were happening. And it's like, you think it's just a schedule slip until you get on orbit and your $250 million satellite doesn't work. And 3 years and $250 million down the drain. That's bad enough. But when it blows up in the test facility and it kills your friends, or it blows up during launch, then that's no fun. So you think I'm too angry? One time I actually pulled out a picture of the Challenger accident, which is the event I'm talking about. I had a meeting where people were trying to do things the stupid way. And I say that with all seriousness. They were just being really, really stupid for short-sighted reasons. And I pulled some strings and demanded about all the big managers and everybody involved in the room, and they're all angry at how I go to this meeting. I said, I know you're all angry about this meeting. I'll guarantee you it won't last 5 minutes. And before we start, I will guarantee you, and because they all knew the issue, I didn't have to explain what the issues were, that before 5 minutes is up, you are all going to agree with me. They're like, nah. I put up one overhead slide. One half of it was a picture of the Challenger accident and the explosion, and the other half was a picture of the crew. I didn't say anything for about 30 seconds. Looked around the room. Any questions? Great, we're doing it my way, right? Grudging the cleaner. Great, meeting. Oh, 2 minutes, perfect. See ya. So that was my hot button. Right? I don't suffer stupid people well, especially when it gets my friends killed. I got better at expressing the reasons why. And you know what? In that aerospace environment back 20 years ago, it didn't make a bit of difference. I was trying to effect a change. I was briefing presidents and vice presidents of Fortune 500 corporations on technical policy, courses of action. Didn't make a bit of difference. So I left. But I came to understand my hobby. I was trained in those early aerospace days by the guys who invented the space program. And I mean that literally. Guys who had worked with Wernher von Braun, guys who had worked with Rob, who knew, I worked with guys who knew Robert Goddard, if you know who Robert Goddard was. He invented rocketry back in the 19-teens, right about 100 years ago. He wrote the first ever rocketry textbook, well, at least that we know of in modern times. Back in the Vedic era, they had rockets, but we don't have any of their textbooks. Would have probably saved us a little bit of time. So he wrote that, and I was trained by guys who knew him. I was assigned for the Challenger mission. I was what was called the payload test conductor. I was one of the last 10 people to approve that launch. One of the guys who had trained me was the command and service module test conductor during the Apollo 1 fire, when Ed White, Gus Grissom, and Roger Chaffee were killed. So he and I could relate. And whenever I had trouble dealing with management on an issue of do it right or do it wrong, I would just go to him and say, hey, so-and-so, here's the issue. He goes, what? Oh, it was dial phones. We didn't have touch tones at that. And He'd make a couple calls, problem went away. But I had to move on. I was being called in other directions. But I learned that hot button. I learned it the hard way, right? I don't wish that on anybody, but it was a very transformative event in my life that started the process for me of peeling back all the veils of society that we see. Many, many spiritual systems talk about Maya, the world of illusion. And there's so many layers of how that's true. The first layer is something that is unique to the Toltec philosophies, the Toltec spirituality, which is the assemblage point. We have the knowledge of the assemblage point, and nobody else does. There's little bits and hints of pieces left in a few Ayurvedic writings about aspects that are part of what the assemblage point does, but they lack all the rest. Nobody else has it. This is one of the great advantages that we have in the Toltec system. So what the assemblage point does, you need to think of it as a combination of a lens, a filter, and a projector. If we saw right now, with our ordinary stage of consciousness that hadn't been trained to handle this, if we saw the entire universe as it really is, it would be so chaotic, most people would go crazy. There is basically an infinite number of radiations from an infinite number of sources, all merging on us simultaneously. So what we have is our assemblage point that filters out everything except what we see as the world, the tonal. And that process is agreed to in a society, in a culture. You may have seen children who are seeing parts of the universe. They see the auras, they see the higher planes, right? Even the higher planes are still, after it's come in through the assemblage point, it's part of what the filter has let in. So it's filtered, and then the lens projector mechanism focuses it on the inside of what we Toltecs call the luminous egg. We are surrounded by this membrane. It's not exactly the membrane that circles the whole tree of life. It's a little more than that. There are things, because everything in the tree of life is part of the tonal. And somewhere out beyond that is the separation between the tonal, or the knowable universe, and the nawal, or the unknowable. There's something beyond. We get hints of that. And so the assemblage point is basically interacting with the holographic generator in our nervous system, and it creates this holographic projection. So yeah, all this reality, the walls, the banners, the clock, the traffic going by outside, the ceiling, this is all just like a Star Trek holodeck. The holodeck is inside our luminous egg. So that's one layer of reality, or illusion, reality in quotes. The next layer is what we're allowed to know. Some of you, I think, are participating, or at least following the Facebook group I have called What We Know, where anytime I find something of interest, whether it's history, archaeology, science, technology, medicine, spirituality, etc., where it's that information outside the accepted box that they want us to stay in, it goes into What We Know. And that was my name for this group. And it's based on the premise of what if what we, how did I word that? It's in one of the posts on there. What if what we think we know isn't what we really know? What if there's really more out there that somebody in this world knows to be the truth, or the best approximation of the truth that we have, but that isn't what's being taught in textbooks, which are getting dumber and dumber and dumber. So we teach history and we leave 90% of it out. We teach science and we leave 95% of it out. We teach art and archaeology and medicine and we leave out all this stuff. So what we know is an attempt to jog people's consciousnesses into thinking about the fact that there's actually a lot of evidence, archaeological, scientific, whatever, about the universe that somebody knows. And if we were actually living as a society, as a culture, using the highest level knowledge in every one of those areas, we would have a world that makes the futuristic world of the Jetsons look like brute caveman world. So that's yet another major, major layer of illusion that is being foisted on the modern world. That there is no need for any scientific advancement. All we need to do is use what we already know. So that was the premise of this What We Know group. I used to have an online internet discussion group, and I learned a lot from that short-lived attempt because I couldn't get people to sit down in a group and engage in discussions about it. I had a small online audience only, and this was, what was that? That was like 6, 7 years ago. And most of the subjects I was talking about were so far out there, nobody believed it. Whether the people I had invited over to participate in the discussions, whether it was the people like, that's a bunch of bunk, right? I couldn't get anybody to engage. It's like, what am I doing wrong? Well, what I was doing wrong was I was ahead of my time. Now, the subjects in What We Know, they're on Facebook, they're on website, everybody's, and some of them are even on mainstream media, which is pretty amazing. That 6 years, 7 years later, stuff that was too fringe for people to talk about in public, because we don't go there. We don't talk about that at parties. And now it's like everybody's talking about it. So who knows, maybe I helped plant a seed in a few people. That's why this shamanic weekend we got coming up, the Seeds of Power. The work that we're going to do in that weekend is we're planting these little seeds. So I shared those examples of one of my big hot buttons. Why is it I don't suffer stupid people easily? It's because stupid people killed my friends. So you have to find your hot buttons, and I'll be happy to help you with that process. This knowing yourself, one of the ways we use the Toltec work is the dreamer, stalker, warrior. You have to know and balance all those aspects. Some of us, in fact, I would probably venture a guess to say every one of us is born with one of those three natures in excess, and one of them really, really weak, and the other is probably somewhere in between. And you probably know which one you are. So the key is you have to consciously and willingly force yourself into the fire to develop the others. For me, my warrior was here. Didn't see a Roman or an Englishman whose head I didn't want to take off. Clearly they had one head too many. They invaded my ancestors' country, a couple thousand years ago. So clearly that needs some, we need to continue that, right? Well, maybe not. My dreamer was, I was pretty good stalker. It was mid-level. I got really good at chess at an early age. I could apply that in certain analytical, scientific type things. Get me out, as somebody I know once said, I was good at math and bad at recess, meaning the social skills. I can't imagine who said that. Hate it when they're right. I really did flunk recess. There were times where it's like, I don't want to go out and play with those people. I don't understand. I just went to the library at recess. Where everybody else wanted to play football and I wanted to play baseball in the middle of winter. It's like, wait a minute, I want to play baseball. Nobody else. I got there, hit the ball by myself, right? I really did flunk recess. So, idea, plan, action, right? That's dreamer, stalker, warrior. You have to understand where you're weak, and then you have to proactively put yourself in that situation over and over and over again. If you work someplace and you're really good at the action and the thing, just tell me what to do and get out of my way, right? Force yourself to go upstream and do the planning work. And once you got the planning down, go upstream and you'll have the idea, the planning, somewhere in there. Just make yourself go learn the parts you're not good at. That's the only way you're going to get better at the things you're weak at. And it's not going to be comfortable. In fact, I can pretty much guarantee you when you start doing all this transformative work on yourself, it will be uncomfortable. In fact, I guarantee discomfort if you're doing it right. And the key is you learn to enjoy them. When we turn up the heat, you just need to do it more. There's another way to look at how to apply the dreamer, stalker, warrior, how to use these Toltec tools of attention and intent. And we're going to be teaching a few specific tools for those in the Shamanic Arts Weekend. We're going to be really emphasizing those skills. But I want to start you thinking about 4 other areas. There's 4 major spheres of activity that we all have to balance if you're going to be on a shamanic path, an esoteric, serious spiritual path. And these are traditionally or often called the 4 magics. And they're the green magic, the red magic, the white magic, and the black magic. And each of you need to start developing at least one major activity in each of these areas. You're not limited to one. But you can't say, oh no, I'm really good at the green and the white and the black. But I'm not going there on that red stuff. No, don't go there. That won't work. You will get a few steps along the path, and then that's where you will stay. Does everybody understand that? Great. I guess we're done. Anybody want more information? Anybody have questions about that? Gosh, you guys are so quiet. I have a request. May I have more water, please?
I've read a lot of stuff about the white magic and the black magic, but not about the red and the green.
Okay. What do you know about the white magic?
Just that it's more on the side of the light, not so much on the side of the dark, is the way that I understand. Does that make sense?
Yes. What you're
That's
saying
what
makes
I'm trying to
sense.
say.
It's just not the whole story.
Okay.
It's not the whole story. So in this case, the white, black does not equal good, bad. You're kind of going there.
Mhm.
So let's start with the red. Thank you,
You're welcome.
lovely Bonnie. The red magic are those activities that are based on the unity of the human race. And the red we're talking about is blood. So bloodline systems. So if you are a Lakota Sioux and you're following traditional Lakota practices, that would be your red magic. If you are Nordic and you're following traditional Nordic shamanism using the Nordic tree of life and learning to invoke the Nordic gods like Thor and Odin, that would be your version of red magic. If you're Celtic and you were following a path of traditional Celtic shamanism or Druidism, then that would be your version of red magic. If you are, now here's a case where it depends on how it's being used. The Toltec system can be considered a form of red magic. It can also be considered in the green category, which I'll define next. It could be, depending on how it's used, it could be put in the white category. Because the Toltec system, the Toltec culture, was never a genetic race. By comparison, the Mayan philosophy, the Mayan system, the Mayans were one Native American race, the Maya. They were a Native Indian tribe. They moved into the same area that had been previously occupied by the Toltecs after the Toltecs dispersed. So there could even be Mayan Indians who were trained in the Toltec ways. This has led to a lot of blurring between what historians now call Mayan and what historians call Toltec. We'll come back to that issue another day because that's long and complicated. So the red systems, depending on how you use it, it's any kind of genetic lineage that teaches a spiritual philosophical system, especially one based in ritual.
That's why it's called magic.
Magic is here defined as a system that combines art and philosophy and science. Back in the olden days, before the Roman Catholic Church decided to vilify the field of magic, that's what it was. It was heavy on art, it was heavy on philosophy, and it was weak on science. People got a lot and tried to do magic. I'm not talking about stage magic, I'm talking about magic as a real art form where you learn to do things, setting an altar the way we do, invoking the quantum mechanical energies, which is what we do when we set altars a particular way. You could call that a form of magic, but it's including the art, the philosophy, and the science.
Could we also substitute the word alchemy for magic? In other words, you're in a described way, you're taking different elements and putting them together or arranging them to create a desired effect.
Yes and no. I would say yes. Alchemy does everything you'd say. Alchemy is more of a science. It can also be considered magic. I would say alchemy is a subset, but I'm not hard and fast on that. I think of it more as a subset of the broader field of magic, and alchemy is one branch. Because you can do valid magic without it being alchemy. You can do valid alchemy and without doing some of the other forms of magic. But it's more heavily into the science, and it always has been. So
It's also ritualized in a number of different ways.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
so it
Part of it.
that's a big gray area. There's a lot of overlap, is what I would say, between magic and alchemy. You know, it's not 100%, but it's, you know, think the Vesica Pisces kind of overlap. So the red magic, you know, I would include, for the way I practice, I would include masonry. I'm a mason. My father was a mason. There's a lineage there. I'm descended from Scottish families who were part of the Knights Templar and were part of that in the era when the Knights Templar went underground and modern Freemasonry was born during the 1300s. So there's a lineage there that goes back hundreds of years. So for me, it is part of my red magic. It does involve ritual, and it does support the transformative work that I do. So you look at that. If you have any questions about any particular activity you engage in or interested in, you know, which of these 4 categories that fits, you know, just ask, and I'll help you figure that out. Mostly by asking you questions, and you will give yourself the answer. Does that make sense? Everybody kind of got the red magic thing. It's this lineage. Green magic is kind of what it sounds like. It's nature-based. It's learning to use herbs and plants as medicine. It's to use herbs and plants for their spiritual properties. In the world of shamanism, it's learning to communicate with the plant spirits and talk to the spirit about what it is good for. How do I use this for healing? How do I use it to help somebody spiritually transform? When I was still in aerospace, I was promoted to being a manager. And like most really good engineers who become managers, our job is to do everything ourselves. Or our natural response, rather, is to do everything ourselves until we give ourselves ulcers, and then we realize there's this word in the dictionary we never heard of before called delegate. So I learned how to delegate, but not before I gave myself ulcers. One sip of coffee, this is the days when I still drink coffee, and I would have burning, searing pain in my stomach. So I went to my wacky chiropractor friend, and I told him what was going on, and he said, "Oh, well, you've got ulcers." "Oh man, how do you know?" It's like, well, down the diagnostic tree, and it's like, well, here's what will happen if you go to your medical doctor. They're going to do this and this and give you these drugs, have these and these side effects, and in 6 months you won't be any better. I'm like, oh, well, that doesn't sound like fun. He says, so the other option is quit drinking coffee. And somewhere there it came out that I was drinking about 8 or 10 cups of coffee before noon every day and kept going in the afternoon. He said, quit drinking coffee, you've got to go cold turkey, and you should probably replace it with chamomile tea, which I knew was, oh, you drink that at bedtime, right? He said, oh no, it's got these great properties for healing the lining of your GI tract. I was like, really? So I started buying chamomile tea, and I did. I went cold turkey, and I started drinking chamomile tea, and once in a while, I thought, oh, I can have a little sip of coffee, one sip, and So after one or two of those attempts to cheat, it went away. So then I had just chamomile. And then I was going to the health food stores and I was buying these 1 pound bags. You know, that's what then they were serving. I was like, no, I want the whole bag. Really? Yeah. So I was buying these whole bags. And then I was shopping for these whole bags of chamomile tea. And then I realized I could grow it. So I lived in this little, in this house that had like a little cracker box of a yard. So I had all these planters everywhere. And I was growing my own chamomile tea. It's the first herb that I developed a spirit relationship with. And it's like, wow, this is amazing. I for 2 or 3 years, I grew amazing chamomile tea. I would pick the blossoms, and you have to pick them if you just let it go and you come back in a week, they've all gone to seed and then the plant's dead, right? But if you keep picking them off every day, you have to go around every plant every day, pick every blossom that's ready, and then it just keeps putting out more, and then you go from being a week of where it's blooming to like a couple months. And so I would harvest all this chamomile tea and I would dry it in my dehydrator and I'd have my year's supply of chamomile tea. And it was amazing experience. Then in the fullness of the time, when I left aerospace and by the way, within 1 to 2 months, the ulcers were gone, but I gave up coffee for a couple of years before I went back to drinking. And then I could have that sip because the GI tract had healed. Then I was left aerospace, I was in naturopathic medical school, and somewhere I'd been in there a year. The first year is all about hardcore science. And then we start getting into these herbal classes. And so I had been reading about herbal medicine. Oh, this is good stuff, right? And then I also started learning about homeopathy, which I would also put in the green medicine thing. It's a natural, nature-based way of using plants and minerals for healing. So any mineral work you do, any crystal work, nutrition, would all be part of, depending on how you, the green medicine path, some kind of healing. Now, funny aside, before I come back to the herbal class I'm going to mention in a minute, is one of the things that when you study with Kachora, who is a couple steps up my lineage, he tells you have to know a minimum of he said a minimum of 1,000 plants and their healing uses. And so this is one thing Coyote has not done. So Coyote is high-level shaman, right? But every time he talks to Kachora, he goes, Coyote, how many herbs you know now? 3. Go, Coyote! Oh! Right. So a couple of weeks ago when I was down in SoCal, I was talking to Coyote, and I said, yeah, I don't know. Let me see where I'm at. 1, 2, somewhere around 500 or 600. And he said, what? This is Coyote. Yeah, about 500 or 600. You know, my Western herbs and my Chinese herbs. And it's like, yeah, about 500 or 600. He's like, oh, change subject, right? So that's what I have on Coyote, is the herbs. But yeah, that's healing. Because this is the medicine for when the lights go out, right? Shamans, among other things, besides our spiritual work and to intervene on the spiritual planes on behalf of our tribe and our party, is we also have traditionally been healers. That's one of the skills a shaman needs to know. And Coyote has tremendous healing abilities in the energetic realm of different things, and prescription of psychomagic rituals. We'll come back to that another day. But yeah, it's the healing. So that's the whole world of green magic. And so I had this, started studying it. Before I went to naturopathic school, I knew more about herbalism than any of the other categories of healing. And so I get out there, I started learning about homeopathy, and I was realizing, oh, this is quantum physics. Oh, this is cool stuff. That's right up my alley. You know, highly dilute medicines. I mean, how are they working? Well, you start reading the information, the data, it's very clearly, it's a frequency effect, but it's a frequency, but the way it behaves, and that's a whole different lecture, is it's it mimics quantum mechanical behavior of electron penetration and reflection off surfaces. So that's how I know it's a quantum mechanical waveform. But then I took an herbal class, a wonderful class from a guy who runs an herbal medicine school up in the mountains of eastern Arizona. And his name is Peter Bigfoot. Sounds like it's a great American name, but he's a white guy who has size 15 shoes. His feet are size, and he can't buy any shoes that fit. So over the years, he learned to make his own shoes, right? But he's shorter than me by about 4 inches, but he's got monster feet, right? And great, I got to know him. I wish I had kept in touch over the years, but I've lost touch. You know, I moved back to California first, and then moved to almost Oregon second. So we've just lost touch over the years. And he ran a class, I think it's a 4-day class, where we go out there, you camp out in the middle of these mountains, and he teaches you all about these native Southwest plants. And it's all experiential. He just goes on and these nature walks every day, morning and afternoon, and then in the evening we might have a lecture, right? And he goes around this plant and he tells you stories, and you pick the plant and you taste it, and so there's a plant in the Southwest deserts. It appears in California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas, and down into Mexico. And the plant's name is chaparral, not to be confused with 20 or 30 other plants that also have the name chaparral.
It's also a community name.
Not to be confused with the generic name of chaparral for any low scrub brush, whether it's a chaparral plant or not. So that's where Latin names for plants come in. This one in particular is called Larrea tridentata. And sometimes it may be called Larrea divaricata. And he started going down the list of things it could be used for. And he started talking and kept talking and talking and talking. This huge list of all the things this plant was good for. I was like, well, wait a minute. Has this ever been turned into a homeopathic medicine? And he said, I don't know. I don't do anything with homeopathy. I'm an herbalist guy. So at that time, the medical school I went to required you to do a research project to graduate. They later dropped it because none of the other naturopathic schools required it. It was scaring away potential students, and I think it was a mistake. I think they should have gone to the other schools and said, hey, you guys got to raise your standards because our profession needs to know how to do research. So basically, I started doing the preliminary research. No one had ever converted the Larrea tridentata chaparral plant into a homeopathic medicine. So that became my PhD, or not PhD, my doctoral thesis. And I didn't know it, but there was a homeopathic school on the other side of the city who was doing a homeopathic test of the same plant at the same time, but I published first. So I was first. And it got published in one of the naturopathic homeopathic journals, and all the properties of how to convert that. So that is the second major plant that I developed that really close relationship with. And I'll be driving along through desert, and it's like all of a sudden, there's my Larrea tridentata. And I tried it whenever, and I didn't do it this last trip down there. I try to stop and pick some and dry it and use it for a tea. It's very good for immune boosting and infections, and 20 pages of other good stuff it's used for. So that's an example of how you immerse yourself. This is how a shaman learns a plant. Is you go out, you sit with a plant, you talk to it. You commune with it on the astral level. And so in this shamanic weekend, the learning how to build your etheric body, your astral body, or some of the skills we're going to be starting on, because it's required for your spiritual growth. So that's the world of green magic, is immersing yourself in nature.
One of the things you had on the list here was knowledge of poisons, and some of our best medicines are worst poisons. But I remember when I was doing some family history work, our families lived in a castle in northern England on the border of Scotland called Alnwick Castle. And one of their claims to fame is they have the biggest poison garden in the world. You know, the guy traveled all over the world and he collected, you know, exotic plants that were some of the most potent poisons. And for some reason, there's something about that that's always drawn me, you know. And so when we started putting in our gardens, I started creating a poison garden and then also an invasive plant garden, things that, you know, like thistles that if you fall into it, you'll hurt yourself or whatever. To keep it, you know, more under lock and key so that animals and kids and stuff won't get in there. But I know that some of the issues that I have, when it's really, really bad, the only thing that helps is like belladonna, and that's deadly nightshade. And so that's like one of the most powerful poisons, but at the same time, it can be a really powerful medicine too. And so understanding that line, you know, in between them. But I think the point I guess I was trying to make is that why would I have this fascination with a poison garden, you know, other than it's some of my work, you know, that needs to happen in this green magic area. And that's kind of how you know whether it's something you should be including.
The reason why it's in there is you have to know how to treat it, right? And if you start using poisons for nefarious purposes, then you've crossed over into the black magic. Let's talk about the black magic, since that came up. And what that is the generic term black magic, oh, it's a black magician, is anytime you do anything to interfere with the rights and the freedom of another individual, you are officially practicing black magic. You are becoming a black brother or a black sister. You are crossing over that line to serve the dark side. And that can be a faster path, as Master Yoda says, but it doesn't get you where you really want to go. If anybody wants to learn how to be a black magician, this is not the school to do that. You know, I won't teach you that. If you want to learn defense against the dark arts, as they would call it in Harry Potter, that's some things I can teach you.
But what you just described as black magic, is that what you're saying is one of the four magics? Which
it's
is
an aspect of it.
Okay.
But the bigger picture, that's what the traditional explanation is. But in terms of you need to develop this side of yourself, is we all have to learn to work with our shadow self. So looking into the dark places, confronting the dark side of ourself, and placing it under our conscious control is probably the most important aspect of the black magic that we all have to do. You will have dreams, you will have meditations, and at a certain point you'll be instructed to go specifically do meditations with your shadow self. The workings, doing anything at night, doing anything where you're avoiding the light for specific reasons, like you want to confront your shadow self, best time to do it is at night. And using the moon, using the stars can be considered black magic, but not in the sense of you're using it to hurt anyone. Learning aspects of warfare, both spiritual warfare and physical warfare, could be considered black magic. When you study martial arts, when you study martial arts weapons, when you study non-martial arts weapons, so like martial arts weapons might be like the bow and arrow, the staff, the nunchakus, anything like that. That's a weapon. Its purpose is either self-defense or offense. So if you use it for offense, in certain circumstances, it would be considered black magic because you're using it to hurt someone, unless you're doing it preemptively, unless you're doing it in self-defense. But you have to study it in order to, when somebody comes at you with a club, oh, wait, hold, stop your attack. I'm going to look up the right incantation, right? Too late. You need to know what to do ahead of time. You need to either zap them with your energy ball, which can work when you build up enough energy, or you need to learn how to step out of the side and neutralize him, which is the way of Aikido. I'm just going to use the minimum force necessary to neutralize you, which works great in theory until you find yourself grappling on a parking lot covered in broken glass, and the person you're trying to minimize their attack with the minimum force necessary and not harm them has 5 friends standing behind him. In which case you better have something else going for you. So studying that is motivated by self-defense, but it's also learning how to hurt. The system of karate and martial arts that I studied, yeah, I know how to kill people. I know how to maim, and I've never once had to use it in action. When you have that knowledge, you have that ability, you exude an aura. I was stopped at a gas station one night. And I'm just standing there, the pump is running, and a car pulls in, a guy gets out, his engine's running, and he's smoking a cigarette, and he starts trying to pump gas. And I said, "Excuse me, sir, but there's no smoking allowed here. That's very dangerous. Can you please stop?" And I think I clicked over and stopped my pump just because he was like 10 feet away waving a cigarette. And then I realized as he turned and faced me that this guy was drunk and or high on who knows what, screaming at me, profanity, "You mother effer." And he started walking toward me, and involuntarily I just moved into a defensive, ready position. My weight shifted, my posture changed, and this guy was, completely gone, right? He's just like out of it, drunk and high on probably who knows what kind of drug. But he wasn't mellow, so he wasn't just smoking pot, right? He was on one of the uppers. All of a sudden, after I was ready to go and do whatever I needed, he stopped. And it was like he just woke up. He was looking and he was trying to focus his eyes, and something in his higher essence detected the energy shift when I went into attack mode. And all I did was just change my subtle positioning, right? And he looked around like he didn't know who he was, where he was, what he was doing there. But all of a sudden, his whole demeanor changed, and it went from being, I'm a drunk a-hole about to beat the crap out of somebody, to realizing, I'm about to get toasted. And he turned and he walked and he got in his car and he drove away. It's the closest I've ever come to any kind of real confrontation. There were thousands of hours of training that went into that moment. So some kind of that work is something that everybody needs to do. You don't have to get a black belt. You just have to start training in physical self-defense, in defense against the dark spiritual arts. It's all part of knowing yourself. You can be the biggest pacifist in the world, but I don't know a mother anywhere in the world who isn't willing to kill to defend their child. And any of you ladies who've had children can correct me on that if you think I'm wrong.
Especially Leo rising.
Oh, gee,
Don't
Leo
touch those
rising.
kids.
Yeah, you know who does most of the killing in the lion tribe, right?
Mm.
Tribe of lions. It's the women.
Tiger mom here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, it's very real. You know, when push comes to shove and somebody's about to take out your child, I put the money on the mom 100 times out of 100. The mom or the thug? No, I'm betting on the mom. Don't mess with ladies defending their offspring. It's the best advice I could give anybody. Actually, it's the second best advice. The best advice I could give anybody is don't mess with anybody.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter if they're
Don't
a
mess
mother
with
with a child.
people.
Just don't do it.
Be nice.
Be nice.
Be kind.
We're all in this together, and that's one of the big lessons humanity has to learn. That's actually one of the purposes of the Toltec work, is raising consciousness enough that we link our collective consciousness, that we just stop it. Everybody did that homework, right? The Stop It homework. They went and watched the Bob Newhart Stop It video.
I don't remember
No, but I
being
had
homework.
that like echoing in my mind several times
Okay.
recently.
Bob Newhart, the comedian Bob Newhart, did a
I
skit
loved it.
on one of the late night comedy shows. I don't think it was SNL. It might have been Mad TV. It may have been something else. And he's in there playing a psychologist, and the name of the skit is Stop It. It's about 6 minutes long. Your homework is to go watch it this week. So go watch Bob Newhart Stop. So that's what humanity needs to do in a lot of. It is. It's hilarious.
It's actually from his show, The Newhart Show, with Suzanne
Yeah,
Pleshette.
it's great. I mean, it's
It wasn't.
I
with
thought it
Suzanne
was a
Pleshette.
knockoff of
It-
that.
There was an episode
Oh.
in that show that
Oh, really?
was that. with a-
Interesting.
But
With a patient. And,
yeah. It's I can't remember the name of the female comedian that was in there, but yeah, it was clearly not from the Bob Newhart show. It was from something else. So if he had something
I
similar,
have seen it, yeah.
yeah. Anyway, go watch it. It's
It's
definitely
great.
worth it. So
Mhm.
you have to come to grips with his shadow self. If you think you want advice on how to do meditative work with your shadow, that's something you should come see me about privately. So, white magic covers all those activities that I would describe as purity, devotion, adoration, the mystical path of pure faith, as opposed to the paths of esotericism and occultism, where we are going systematically through the tree, mastering each thing in order. The mystic path goes from here straight up the center column. Just pure faith and love of God will get them home. It works. It happens all the time. And ultimately, we're all suited for one of those two major groupings or another. But that's what those Dion Fortune books I'm requiring you to read and write me something about what it means to you, talks about that specific breakdown. I think that's the esoteric orders in their work covers that. So that purity, that devotion, the making your home a temple. So the hearth fire path could be part of that as an option. Doing temple work in any system of philosophy or religion where you're serving in a temple would qualify as the white magic. It's not just do good, avoid evil. There's a working the upper portion of the tree of life. Working the lower portions of the tree of life could be placed in the dark, the black magic area, because especially to get out of Malkuth, you've got to confront that shadow self. So up here, you're working at the highest levels of consciousness, your highest divine nature. That would all be under the category of white magic. So those are the kinds of things that go into this whole concept of know thyself. Question?
Well, more of a comment. So kind of what we're looking for is things that we resonate from these 4 categories, because we do want to balance those out. But I think what I like about this is where normally we might look at different systems. Oh, I want to be a Wiccan, or I want to be, I want to just strictly deal with light worker stuff. I don't want to go to the dark stuff. This kind of shows us that we to be balanced, we have to be familiar with all of these areas, and how you can see how you could be quite unbalanced if you just chose a system that didn't include these.
Yeah, that's all true.
And for me, I like it better than picking a system. I don't I'm not an on path kind of person, but at least I know okay, I know I can see easily that I'm working all of these different areas at this point in my life. Some better than others.
Yeah, we all have some that are better than others. Yeah. Question?
Yeah, could you give some examples of something in the white besides, working in a temple or monkish? I mean, what's something that's maybe a little bit more practical for the kind of life someone who's more new to this might be?
Any act of selfless service. You want to go down and work at a food bank, a soup kitchen on Skid Row. You're not necessarily going down there to fix anybody. You're going down, I'll volunteer to serve lunches. You just go down, you go in, you serve lunches, you're helping them in that moment. It's a selfless act. You don't get money for it. You don't get recognition for it. A selfless act of devotional service would qualify as the white magic.
And then also the hearth fire path. It's the intent is to make your home a temple, but you've already expressed that you've practiced some of that, where you're just doing your house cleaning or whatever with intent and with intention. And again, it's kind of a selfless act. You're absorbed in that, and you're actually giving the energy that you might otherwise waste on other random thoughts to a higher purpose. In which case, that's giving back.
You could go out and you could pay the nominal fee to clean up a certain stretch of highway. Right? Put up your sign. And
This mile sponsored by.
Yeah, sponsored by Kent. And nobody knows who Kent is. But you just go out and you clean it up, right? You're not out there necessarily expecting to get anything in return because you're paying for the privilege. But it's an act of service. This road looks like heck. I'm going to go clean it up. So it's the devotion, the purity. You're doing it for the love of serving humankind. Now, if you're out there hating every moment of picking up the trash, oh, look at these smelly people I'm having to serve food for. It's like, no, you love them the way Christ loved people. When Christ said, this new commandment I give unto you, to love one another as I have loved you, that's not just metaphoric. He was radiating an energy, that heart energy. He was turning it on, and every person he encountered, he was zapping them with the love ray, right? It's like the sun shining its light out through space in all directions. It doesn't know, the sun doesn't really know who all is receiving all those photons. A lot of them just go into the darkness of space, and some being on another planet pick it up through telescopes and, oh, yeah, look, there's a faint little star over there. I don't know what's going on over there. right? Too far away to even know there's a planet with people on it orbiting our sun, right? He's just radiating. So Christ is radiating that love. And as soon as he walks into the room, walks around there, everybody notices. They feel it. It's palpable. That's a way of loving people. That's one of the esoteric meanings of the Bible that isn't often discussed. It's like, yes, you should really love that your ability to look into that hairy, smelly, dirty, crude, mean, short-tempered, mentally deranged homeless person and see that God self inside there, and to understand that somewhere along his life path something seems to have gone wrong, unless it is his dharma to come here and experience this in this lifetime. He may be doing a better job of fulfilling his true will and intent for this incarnation than maybe Gandhi did. I use that example because we don't know what Gandhi's dharma was, what his true will was. If his job was to stay a corporate lawyer, I've mentioned this before, and bring ethics to business, well, then he really messed up, right? He went off and he created this peaceful protest that resulted in Indian independence from England. But because what England was calling India was parts of many different countries, it forced that division along the lines of the Hindu parts of the country and the predominantly Muslim parts of the country that led to a serious civil war in which 1 million people or more died. That was Gandhi's fault, in a way, right? He didn't create the Muslim-Hindu hatred, but and then the mass exodus where everybody had to move, ripped out of their homes. No, you've got to move to the Hindu part and you've got to move to the Muslim parts. That created East and West Pakistan, which in the fullness of time became Bangladesh and Pakistan. And look at all the people that are continuing to die over there on these religious wars. So we don't know. But that homeless person, yeah, if you can identify with that spark of divine essence and truly love it, that's better than slapping that food into the soup bowl as they walk by your service line. But even better is to include that radiation of love. Like you pull in that Christ energy and you're radiating it out to everybody in the area. It's like, oh, no. She's got blue and green hair. I'm not going to radiate my love in her direction. Everywhere else, but not there. No.
That looks good.
You're going to, yeah, I actually like it. I'm picking on you because you're wearing purple. And nobody sat on the purple pillow, so okay, I don't pick on that person. No, it's, you radiate love indiscriminately. You don't care about race. You don't care about hair color. You don't care about the fact that they have designer jeans or not. You just radiate love because they're humans and fellow creatures of God, and you serve them. Those are acts of devotion. That would qualify as white magic. Question?
I'm just remembering the last lines of a poem by Hafiz, a Sufi poet, and it's about the sun shining like that. It says, look what happens with a love like that. It lights up the whole world.
Yeah. Never heard of this poet. But I think
He's
he got it
amazing.
right. I think he nailed it. So good for him. It is a him, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. What other questions do you have about the four magics and the know thyself material?
You know, the Coyote's Toltec Survivor book, you know, the one thing he states in there is that, you know, by going through that course and doing the exercise, that he'll be able to teach you how to wake up So wake up is kind of the first step to seeing these traits that you have, and the fact that not everything in the shadow self is going to be bad, but you got to go there and look in the closet to see what's in there. And so fear is a big indicator. So especially with this black magic stuff, you know, there's a fear factor there. And if you got a fear factor, then you got to realize that that's a button that you have, like the Satanism paper. I still owe Coyote. So that's one of my buttons, you know.
How many years now?
Shush. So the thing is that the exercises in the Toltec Survivor book, the very beginning ones, are very specifically designed for this purpose of waking you up. But we talk about manifestation as two different things. If you're trying to manifest something, that's potentially a good thing. If you're manifesting, it's not a good thing. It means that your buttons are getting pushed and you're reacting. So you're still in that reaction state. But one of the things that he brings out in there that was helpful for this material, that this is your material, this is what you got. So like I just broke my fingernail and I'm sitting here chewing on it, and so I know I shouldn't be chewing on it because it's going to make it worse. But if I use that then as a tool to wake up, every time I catch my finger in my mouth, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm doing that thing again. And you're not hard on yourself about it. You know, the first few times it's like, oh, okay, there I go again, you know. After that, it's, okay, well, why am I doing that? Am I nervous? Am I uncomfortable? Or am I whatever? There's reasons why I'm doing that. So then you can look at those, and then you can start saying, well, is that legitimate? Is this something that I want to get rid of? Well, if you get rid of this, and this is just one little annoying habit, but what else then am I going to use to help wake myself up?
Mhm.
So in that moment, I was asleep because I was doing a knee-jerk reaction kind of thing. So rather than immediately trying to squelch all of these things that we're considering to be bad habits, is to actually use those as a tool to wake up. And then as you do that, you know, then you can go, okay, well, you know, I'm feeling uncomfortable and I want to chew my fingernail. Well, okay, I'm choosing in this moment not to do that. And so one, I'm awake and I'm aware, if nothing else, in that particular moment. And then over time, you can decide if these are things that you want to keep or get rid of. The other time I had a chance to work a lot on this know thyself stuff was when I was taking a sexual alchemy class. And, you know, we were encouraged, okay, there's certain urges or impulses that we all may have that may be, you know, morally or socially inappropriate, or we just, you know, don't really want to go there. But until you examine it and look at it and understand where that impulse is coming from, and making a conscious decision to act on it or not act upon it. Even acting upon it can be just in your mind, seeing that through and going, you know what, that isn't going to do it for me. I really don't want to go there. Or, you know what, this is something I'd like to experience. And, you know, my mom or my church says it's morally incorrect, but society doesn't see, you know, that's a choice then that you're making consciously going forward. So it's everything we do every day long, all day long, can be the material that we look at to say, am I doing this consciously, or if is this a knee-jerk reaction? Did this come from bad parenting or bad social skills or bad churches upbringing and all of that? Did my teacher? Had an experience this week to be there when my little cousin was going through some stuff, and apparently he had a really hard time, or he loved to read, but only what he wanted to read, and his teacher kept failing him because he wouldn't read the book she wanted him to read. And so they finally said, just let him read. If he does all the work he's supposed to do, can he just read a book about sports or whatever it is that he's interested? And it was fine. But to this day, he has a knee-jerk reaction about being afraid of reading because of how mean his teacher was to him. So we could think, okay, is he stupid? Is he just, in denial about these things? Whatever. But they're really real things until you look at them and experience them and decide, hey, well, this is really stupid. I'm like 58 years old and I'm still doing these stupid knee-jerk reaction things because of something that happened to me in second grade, and then at least you own it and you know it for yourself what you're doing.
That knee-jerk reaction, probably the biggest area that I see that going on right now in our culture is in the world of politics. And in terms of illusion, we started even talking about illusion. The political system that's actually running our country is not the system we all think we're engaged in. We have voting districts where there are more registered voters than there are people living in the district. And those are often in the places where they don't have a paper trail on ballots. It's all computerized. Recipe for fraud, right? Voter fraud. Now the non-voter fraud, it's the made-up voter fraud.
The real
Go
voter
down.
fraud is
Yeah.
behind the machines.
Yeah.
Right.
The whole gamut of political issues, whether it's gender-based, race-based, weapons-based,
Partisan.
all the partisan politic issues. There was a meme going around, I actually forwarded it, it showed, here's all the major issues out there. So the so-called left has adopted one or two issues, the so-called right has adopted one or two issues, and everything else, they vote exactly the same. Doesn't matter who's in office, doesn't matter who controls which branch of Congress, everything comes out the same, right? The appearance of choice is one of the biggest illusions we have. Appearance of political choice is one of the biggest illusions we have. So if you are experiencing hot buttons and a hot button reaction on any of the major political issues, that's part of your shadow self that you need to go look at and wake up to the fact that none of it matters. It's all for show. So yeah, we have to confront that. If we don't like our country being run that way, well, it's time for a change. We need to change something about it. So it's a learning opportunity, right? If every time somebody posts something on your least favorite issue and you're screaming and ranting and posting and like, you've already lost because you bought into the appearance that there's a choice. You bought into the artificially created duality. All the issues that you only care about because suddenly somebody told you to care about. All the stuff that comes up, it's like, oh my gosh, it's the gay voter issue the gay rights issue in South Carolina. And everybody in the whole media goes there, right? And in the dark of the night, then they pass some other law that they didn't want you looking at, right? And the next time, it's not the gay rights issue, it's the gun issue, and it's not so they changed the educational system, they changed the whole structure of society, and then 2, 3, 4 years later, people go, well, where did this law come from? Oh, you remember that big distraction over here? That's where it came from. So as soon as there's a big furor in the media, start looking at what they're distracting you from, okay? You have to become aware of that. If you buy in to this issue or that issue, on whichever side you're on, then you're playing the game that's being put upon you, and you're not exerting your true independence. So look at the issues, and if you want to say something about an issue, then say it. But say it in a way that isn't a reaction.
Without emotional attachment to it.
Just say, here's why we do it this way, right? Here's why we FTFP when we're launching a rocket. So things don't blow up and people don't die. So this know thyself is an ongoing process. This needs to become part of your MO, part of the way you work. It's not, okay, this week I'm going to go out, I'm going to know myself, and I'm going to read a book in the white magic, black magic, red magic, and green magic, and then I'm done. No. This is part of your future.
Don't you think it's just living it every day?
Yeah. You have to live it every day.
You know, like, so my job, I work at the park.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm around the homeless thing and all that every day.
Yeah.
And basically, my thoughts on the whole homeless thing, I don't match with any of the guys at work. You know what I'm saying? Because they're always on me about, oh, she just wants to go feed him, or oh, she just wants to go. Well, and I don't. That's not what I want. I just want to send them love, and I want them to do better. And if there is one that I feel like feeding, I will feed them. But the point is that that's what I want to do, is send them love. Rise, help them rise up.
Yeah.
Help them do better. You know, just with love. That's to me the only thing.
Right.
But completely ridiculed for it.
Yeah.
If I say one thing, it can even be like, what was I saying the other day about, oh, there was 4 homeless people and 4 dogs in the restroom because they broke the lock off one of the restrooms to get in there. Well, it's freezing out.
Yeah.
It's freezing out. I mean, they make this huge thing and they think it's just ridiculous that they went in the restroom. And all I said was, well, they were probably just trying to stay warm. See? There she is, going and wanting to let the homeless live in the restrooms. That isn't even what I said. It's like, back off.
But you know,
So my job, to me,
Down that bleeding heart.
is to just not give them, when they act like that, just say, that's not what I said. You should listen to what I say.
so
And
that's
just stay calm about
that's a
it.
good
And
yeah.
so it's constantly I'm constantly under fire. Gets old sometimes.
But you're the boss.
I am. But you should see me with my crew. You know, I'm the boss, but I'm also.
Well, you give performance appraisals at some point during the year. That what came to me was this one time I was teaching college physics, and somebody said or did something. Oh, we're sorry, Professor Cage. We didn't mean to make you mad. I don't get mad. I'm the teacher. I give final grades. I have no reason to get mad. And all of a sudden, you could see the look in their eyes. Oh, you didn't do your homework? That hurts me not a bit.
Right.
I'm going to type, when it comes to the end of the course, I have a little box in the computer for them, and I'm going to type a letter in that box. It takes me no more effort to write an A than it does to write an F, or vice versa. It doesn't matter to me which button I push, but I'm going to push the button that you earned. And they were looking. I don't think any of them, these are community college students, I don't think any of them had ever had a professor put it that bluntly to them. Like, you don't want to do your homework? You don't want to write your lab reports? You don't want to study for the test? You want to turn in a test where you get a 30, not a 90? That doesn't bother me at all. Makes my grading easier.
Sometimes you gotta just wait too for your opportunity to, I mean, strike's not the right word, but get your point across. Like this, like I work with several people who are very conservative, you know, and they're not gonna change their mind. I don't sit there and try to be like, you know, try to convince them that bullying politics is, you know, the way we should go in this country and stuff. But this, I had, you know, with this guy, I've talked to him about how he gets his news sources and stuff, but I wasn't going to sit there and fight with him. But then one day I, you know, I found the opportunity where I was like, you know, talking about how Americans don't care. They've been told that the Russians have absolutely hacked the system and they put out fake news and that they were reading fake news and they don't care. I'm like, and I just pointed right at him. I go, are you going to stop getting your news from Facebook? You know, even though you know that that's how they lied and manipulated,
Right.
tried to start race wars,
There
and they
was
use
one
Facebook to
company
do.
churning out info for both sides.
Yeah.
And I
Oh, George Soros funding both sides
Yeah.
of the big, it's not a debate, it was the big protests, right? And the anti-protests, and they're all being paid by Soros, and none of them are there to really protest. They're all paid employees to give the appearance of a protest. So you got the Antifa on one side and the white supremacists on the other, and they're all being paid by the same guy. And that's what shows up on the evening news. So that an illusion of what's really going on in society, there's an example.
But all we can do is set the example within ourselves of how we should be.
Yes, we have to do that as a first step, but we also have to call it when we see it.
Well, I agree with that, but
And we're
but
either
the thing is that
citizens or not.
people, it's just like the skate park. You have all the kids at the skate park, and you always have the kids that just the F word's every other word, and
Right.
they're just and then here comes the bigger person, the grown up that's supposed to be setting the example, and the F word's the every other word, and they're treating the kids like crap because they cuss, and it's like,
Yeah.
where's
Do as I say, not as I do.
yeah,
Look at me.
you know, or can you really just set an example, you know?
Right.
You know?
So, just my observation of this conversation is that we're all going to be good in a couple of these areas. So, your approach to the homeless is falling more into the white magics until the time that you actually run into a violent person, in which case you need to know yourself and how to react then when you see and sense someone who's working contrary to that. And so really it's not about all of them. We can't control any of them, but we can control ourselves. And to be more balanced, we need to be balanced in these different areas, because we do have our knee-jerk reactions, which we can look at and see. But I find that, you know, looking at it in this way with the magics, it's like, okay, well, I'm doing this thing in the green magic, and I'm doing this thing in the red magic, and I'm doing this thing in the white magic, and I'm looking at the stuff in the black magic. So at least I know that I'm more well-rounded, so that because I was actually on the homeless committee up in Mount Shasta, and I went in there with altruistic purposes that I wanted to help with that situation. And I kind of came out of it being kind of jaded because I didn't feel like they really even wanted help. They just wanted a handout.
Right.
And I was leaving a meeting and it was kind of like, I'm not going back. You know, this is stupid. And then I see, you know, 3 homeless people, 2 dogs, a bunch of backpacks, a bike, you know, and I'm like, I don't see these people, you know. Well, it turned out that through one of these people, we ended up with a foster son that we were able to help for 3 years to keep him in school and off the streets and all of that. So if I just, you know, blocked out all homeless people from then on, I'm not going to help anybody because I've been screwed too many times by people. And then there's the other side of that where the homeless in particular, or those who are not all there, are often our guides, you know, in the Bardo. When we're looking, you know, for information, and we don't even know it, sometimes they're channeling stuff, and they can be the guides who point something out, you know, like where your lost car is and how to avoid doing that in the future and stuff. And, you know, it's
No,
just like,
that is
okay,
so true about
Yeah.
mentally ill people.
yeah.
You know, when
Oh, yeah.
you look
I
at
just think they're totally connected to another dimension.
well,
Yeah, some-
what
Some of it
happens
is.
is when you look at mental, and this is kind of a segue, but it came up, and I think it's important for everyone here to know, is most mental illness is better studied and explained and treated using shamanic techniques than any other methods of psychology. Because for many of them, something has short-circuited or never developed, and for that reason, the veil is thin. They don't have the filter working that keeps those voices out. And you can listen to them and you will hear the way they describe it. They're describing they're describing seeing through the veil, or at least hearing through the veil. They're hearing the voices, and sometimes it's angels, sometimes it's demons.
What always amazed me is that no matter how ill they get, my mom's been mentally ill since I was 15. And so no matter how ill she would get, like off of her medicine and not sleep for days, and she always remembered everything to the T, could totally explain it. It was just simply amazing.
Yeah.
Frustrating and super challenging, but really amazing too at what she would go through and see.
Yeah. So just be aware of that. So Bonnie and I both had experiences where the homeless people were, because they don't have that conscious control over all their faculties, other world entities can use them as a channel. So they can give you information, they can be a guide in the moment, they can keep you from going down that dark alley that you shouldn't because there's a mugger waiting there. And if you just ignore them because they're a homeless crazy person and everything that they say should be ignored, then you might walk down that blind alley. But if all of a sudden they're ranting and raving that he said, she says this, and they see you heading there, and all of a sudden something clicks, and they say, but you really don't want to go down that alley because, you know, Joe the mugger, he hangs out behind that second trash can, and he takes out everybody, and da 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 da, and then they're back ranting and raving. And if you miss that, you might walk into Joe the mugger. And if you hear it and you look and you see down the alley that there's 2 blue trash cans right where he said there was, and even though that's the shortcut to where you park your car, you say, you know what, I'm going to walk the long way around. But that comes to your awareness, your presence, your first attention, your second attention. It's, I was very, very fortunate to have a martial arts instructor. He's no longer alive. He was 7th degree black belt in the Shorin-ryu system that I'm a 3rd degree in. He was a police officer. He's a Los Angeles Police Department Reserve police officer, and he was a PhD in criminal psychology. So his whole life revolved around crime and violence and mental disorders. And he thrived in it. He loved what he did. And he was really good at all of them. And he interviewed criminals on how they chose their victims. These are mostly street criminals, not white-collar crimes, finding which bank to rob and all that. It was the street criminals. He would interview them. And 95% of the time, it didn't matter what you were wearing, whether you looked rich, whether you looked poor, whether anything. It was all about your alertness and your body language. You were moving along, not paying attention. Bam! They'd be on you like a lion on a limping zebra. Right? And it didn't matter if you were a 98-pound weakling or a little old lady with gray hair. If there was an alertness and you're aware, awake, that awake word again, and you're walking along and you know everything that's around you, and you could be a 6'10", 350-pound mugger who could pick that little old lady up by the neck and go, they'd leave her alone every time. Because even though they could physically handle her if there was a fight, they knew there was going to be a fight. And anytime there's a fight, somebody is going to be watching, and someone will ID them. And even if they get that little old lady's purse with her $50, somebody's going to finger them. And anytime there's a fight, there's always a chance they might get hurt. Because if she's awake and she lives in this bad neighborhood, there's a really good chance that under that little old lace jacket she's wearing, she's got a weapon. And she knows how to use it. Because she didn't become an old lady in that neighborhood by not knowing how to do any of that. Leave her alone. It's how awake are you? How awake do you appear to the bad guys? Not 100%, but 95% of the decision of the street crime is all chosen on body language and do you look awake?
You know, it's not just street language either. This is the animal world too. So a predator is going to pick off the easiest prey, the one who's, you know, following behind and not paying attention and looking the other way. And I remember when my son was little, there was a woman and her daughter who were hiking up in some hills above Laguna Beach, the Laguna Hills, and ran into a mountain lion, and it took the little girl and dragged her off. And the woman just stood there and screamed until finally a hunter came along and took a log and beat the mountain lion until it dropped the girl. And I always remember her name was Laura Small, and she survived, but she had damage to her eyes and stuff. And the rage that just came up in me, it's like, no, if that was me, I would have taken on the lion, you know. And sometimes this is just a matter of thinking it through. And this is part of knowing yourself. Well, what would I do in a situation like that? And having a plan in mind so that, you know, so you are more mentally, emotionally prepared. But if they were walking along not paying any attention, that's all it would have taken for this mountain lion to come and grab this little girl because it was an easy prey.
When you're out in the woods, I'll get to your question in a minute. When you're out in the woods, you need to be aware that you're out in the woods. And up here in this part, and even down there, there's mountain lions, bobcats, there's lynx, we got wolves, we got bears, we got cougars, you name it. And predators in particular don't like a fight. A predator who's injured is a dead predator 9 times out of 10. Because depending on the severity of the injury, they know that they've got to go off and hole up and lick their wounds and let them heal. And in that time, they are vulnerable to other bigger predators. The wolf doesn't want the grizzly bear finding him when the wolf is hurt and can't get away, right? Because grizzly bears are pretty much the top of the heap in the parts of the world where grizzly bears live. There's not much they have to fear, right? It's like that old joke about, you know, the tiger doesn't lose sleep over the opinions of sheep. Well, the grizzly bear doesn't lose sleep over the opinions of anybody or anything. Right. Okay. They're the king of the forest in the Northlands. So they don't want to, but a grizzly bear will back down from the fight with the wolf. And the wolf will back down from the fight. They're arguing over carcass. They will kind of be very wary, you know, about that, because a grizzly bear gets a cut on his leg and it gets infected. He can't move. He's going to starve. If it's a mother, she can't feed her kids. So there's a big incentive in nature for everybody to avoid getting hurt. So what was your question?
The writer William Burroughs, he wrote Naked Lunch and other poetry. You know, he's an old junkie. He survived. He made his way out of it. But I don't know if someone questioned him about how he survived. You know, he lived in like the slums of Mexico City for a long time. And he calls it being invisible, not necessarily having a presence that's makes someone afraid of attack. He said that in order to be invisible is just to make sure that you see everybody before they see you.
Mm-hmm.
So when he'd be wandering around Skid Row in the middle of the night and you know, he said he never carried a weapon. He would just always make sure that whatever was going on around him, he laid eyes on everything first.
You're looking around. You can't lay eyes on people unless you're aware of what's going on around you. And it's that awareness, that awakeness. That's an exact description. Yeah, you don't. It's just because if the thugs saw him and they see, oh, he's aware. If he were ever attacked, he's one of the ones who would fight back. He's not going to be like the one who's like, oh my God, take my bit. Get your keister up there and defend your child. That's, yeah, I would have been upset too. So, know thyself. All aspects of yourself. And that will include the shadow work. We have to go there. We all have to go there. I remember the first time, it was either in the dreaming or the meditation, where I met my shadow self. And there's a part of me that can go there easily. I can take heads off with the best of them. I've never done it in this lifetime, but I sure know how. But I just don't go there. You put that under your conscious control. Any other questions? Okay, Toltec weekend in a couple of weeks. If some of you are interested in helping this weekend at the event in Sacramento, please stay afterwards and we'll talk details. Okay? Go forth, do good, avoid evil. If you can't avoid it, kick its rear
butt.
end. Well, I was going to say rear end.
We can say butt here. There was one of the big things my Aunt Judy was saying we were